The unthinkable consequences of a U.S. strike on Russia. Remember playing those elaborate multi-day strategy games with your buddies online? The ones where one bad move could wipe out your entire army, maybe even the whole map? You spent hours planning, strategizing, imagining every possible outcome. Now, imagine those aren't pixels. This isn't a game. The unthinkable has happened. The United States has launched a direct, offensive military strike against Russia. Not a covert operation, not a proxy skirmish, but a clear, undeniable first strike on Russian soil. Forget the Cold War chess matches. This isn't about moves and counter-moves anymore. This is the board being flipped.
So, who are the players in this nightmare scenario? First, there's the United States, the nation that just pressed the button, driven by a perceived existential threat or a catastrophic miscalculation. Then, Russia, the target, a nuclear power with a deeply ingrained doctrine of national defense and a history of responding fiercely to perceived aggression. We also have the NATO allies, bound by treaties, now staring down the barrel of a global conflict they never wanted. Beyond them, the vast network of economies, the intricate system of trade, finance, and supply chains that underpins modern life, all instantly in free fall. And finally, every single person on this planet suddenly an unwilling audience to the unraveling of the world as we know it. The inciting incident is etched into history. A precision strike by U.S. forces against a critical Russian military target deep within its borders. The official justification, delivered with chilling gravity, cites an overwhelming, credible intelligence assessment of an imminent, catastrophic Russian attack on U.S. or allied interests. A preemptive strike, they call it, a necessary evil to avert a greater catastrophe. The world watches, breath held, as the missiles fly. On paper, it was meant to neutralize a threat. In reality, it was the match dropped into the powder keg. And then, the escalation. The immediate aftermath is less a bang and more a worldwide shudder. U.S. precision strikes hit their targets. Within minutes, global markets plunge into chaos. Stock exchanges across Asia, then Europe, then the Americas halt trading as algorithmic panic triggers a cascade of selling. Oil prices don't just spike, they launch into the stratosphere, far beyond anything seen during the Gulf Wars. Every national leader issues statements, some condemning, some supporting, all filled with thinly veiled terror. For the average person, it's a sudden, sickening jolt. Your morning commute is suddenly punctuated by frantic news alerts. Your investment portfolio evaporates, and the price of gas at the pump, if you can even find any, becomes a grim joke. Remember the dot-com bubble burst or the 2008 financial crisis? Imagine that, but multiplied by 100 with armed conflict as the backdrop. The illusion of global stability, that bedrock of the post-Cold War era, shatters instantly. And just like that, the playbook got thrown into the sun. Beat 2. Russia's swift, conventional retaliation. Adopt a cold, analytical tone, conveying Russia's calculated aggression. The pace should be brisk but precise, detailing the methodical destruction. Emphasize darkness and silence with a slight pause, allowing the chilling imagery to resonate. Russia doesn't hesitate, but crucially, they don't immediately go nuclear. Instead, they unleash a torrent of conventional military and cyber warfare. Mass cyber attacks target critical infrastructure across the US and its key European allies. Power grids flicker and fail, communication networks degrade, financial systems seize up. This isn't the kind of hack you see in the Matrix. This is real-world darkness and silence. At the same time, aggressive conventional military responses begin. Russian forces launch coordinated missile strikes against NATO bases in Eastern Europe. Naval fleets clash in contested waters. Airspace becomes a deadly free-for-all. It's a calculated, brutal counterpunch designed to inflict maximum pain without crossing the absolute nuclear threshold. The goal isn't just to repel, it's to demonstrate unwavering resolve and to make the US regret its initial move. This isn't just a ripple, it's a tsunami, and the wave just hit! Beat 3, NATO Article 5 and the Fracturing Alliance. Here's where it truly gets complicated. The US invokes Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, calling for collective defense. On paper, this is automatic. An attack on one is an attack on all. In reality, the alliance strains under the weight of an offensive US action. Some NATO members, particularly those geographically distant or economically vulnerable, openly question the wisdom of full participation. Public protests erupt across Europe, demanding non-involvement. Diplomats engage in frantic, ultimately futile behind-the-scenes negotiations. The global condemnation against Russia is widespread, but so is the criticism of the US for initiating such a devastating conflict. The United Nations General Assembly becomes a theater of angry rhetoric, achieving nothing beyond showcasing the complete collapse of international order. The world isn't just taking sides, it's fracturing along new, unpredictable lines. On paper, alliances are ironclad. In reality, they bend or they break. The economic black hole. As the conflict escalates, the global economy doesn't just falter, it collapses into a black hole. Trade routes, already disrupted, become outright war zones. Cargo ships are sunk, air freight is grounded, and crucial choke points for global commerce are either blocked or become too dangerous to traverse. This means supply chains, the invisible arteries of modern life, snap everywhere. Food shortages become critical, first in vulnerable nations, then quickly spreading to developed countries. Energy supplies dwindle rapidly, leading to mass blackouts and rationing. Factories sit idle because they can't get raw materials or workers or power. Financial institutions, already reeling, become insolvent. The idea of money itself starts to lose meaning as people prioritize basic survival. Remember trying to track down a specific rare VHS tape in the 90s? Now imagine trying to find bread or medicine or fuel. Turns out, you can't fund a global war without a global economy. Who knew? Turns out, you can't fund a global war without a global economy. Who knew? The cyber war, which began quietly, now goes overtly hot and devastatingly destructive. It moves beyond financial systems and into the critical infrastructure that sustains daily life. Hospitals lose patient records and the ability to operate life-saving equipment. Transportation systems, from air traffic control to railway networks, seize up, stranding millions. Water treatment plants fail, leading to widespread health crises. Telecommunications are constantly attacked, making reliable communication a luxury. Social media, once a tool for connection, becomes a chaotic, unreliable stream of misinformation and propaganda. For those who remember the early clunky internet of ICQ or Yahoo Messenger, the idea of a global network feeling fragile was a novelty. Now, its fragility means life and death. Society doesn't just fray, it starts to unravel at the seams as basic services vanish. Forget the Matrix, this is just chaos delivered digitally. With conventional options stretched to their breaking point and both sides facing existential threats, the conversation inevitably turns to nuclear weapons. The escalate to de-escalate doctrine, a terrifying Cold War relic, resurfaces as a grim reality. Intelligence agencies on both sides report increasing readiness levels. The deployment of tactical nuclear weapons, smaller and designed for battlefield use, becomes a horrifying possibility. The line between conventional and strategic nuclear conflict blurs. The constant nagging question isn't if they'll be used, but when and where. Every leader, every general, every citizen understands the implications. This isn't a Game of Thrones. This is the end of all thrones. The constant fear of the ultimate red button being pushed casts a pall over every decision, every news report, every waking moment.
Here's where the game theory stops being theoretical and just starts being terrifying. Here's where the game theory stops being theoretical and just starts being terrifying. The snap point arrives not necessarily with a grand singular explosion, but with a terrifying silence. Despite desperate back-channel talks and last-ditch diplomatic efforts, the first tactical nuclear weapon is deployed. Perhaps a low-yield strike on a military target, a show of force, or a desperate act to break a conventional stalemate. The immediate physical damage, while horrific, is overshadowed by the psychological and geopolitical fallout. This isn't just crossing a red line, it's vaporizing it. The unwritten rules of mutually assured destruction, which held for decades, are now null and void. The world recoils in horror, but the momentum of war, fueled by vengeance and survival, becomes unstoppable. Escalation feels inevitable, pushing humanity to the precipice of a full strategic exchange. The consequences are no longer theoretical.